Welcome to the U.S. Daily News Channel. The Russian army is dying in Ukraine, and Putin's generals are looking for a way out of this nightmare. The center of the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia, which Russia started as a military operation but which upset the balances in the world after a while, has recently started to be in Kherson again. The pressure of the Ukrainian armed forces in Kherson increased once again. It stated that the Ukrainian troops suddenly counterattacked and tried to destroy the Russian ammunition that was trying to be evacuated from the region. This pressure on Kherson had actually been going on for about 2 months, and the conflicts in the region were constantly at their fiercest. The Russian army, which could not find an answer to the HIMARS used in the first Ukrainian counterattacks, took a defensive position, while Ukraine, which showed a resistance pushing the borders in the region, which was the scene of bloody conflicts, needed the weapon support of NATO countries against the Russian war machine. The balance began to change when Russia put its latest technology weapons on the field. But the course of the war changed again when the HIMARS sent by the U.S. reached Ukraine amid Biden's reservations. After HIMARS were deployed on the Ukrainian side of the two armies, which had been weighing each other with long-range missiles for a long time, the balances turned upside down. The Ukrainian armed forces used almost perfect weapons, destroying Russia's most critical targets one by one for nearly 40 days. Later, Russian shipments to the western part of Kherson began to be destroyed. The fact that the HIMARS held the critical logistics routes of Russia and the Russian shipments did not pass through these regions created an opportunity for ground operation of the Ukrainian armed forces, and a major Ukrainian offensive began in the region against the completely worn-out Russian army. Nowadays, the Russian army has a move to completely evacuate the western part of the Dnieper River and settle in the eastern part of the Dnieper. However, this move, the iron fist of the Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian armed forces, seems to be blocked by HIMARS. Russia said that the key Kherson bridge was attacked with HIMARS while the zone was being evacuated. According to Russian authorities, Ukrainian forces reportedly attacked a key bridge over the Dnieper River in the Kherson region with 12 HIMARS missiles on Thursday night. According to the reports published after the attack, there were serious losses in the Russian forces. However, in order to distort these attacks, the Kremlin announced that there were civilian casualties after the attack. The main purpose of these statements is thought to be to restrict the use of HIMARS. Military experts could not independently confirm whether the Ukrainian forces were responsible for the missile attack and the death toll. A Bulgarian military news site and a Ukrainian news site confirmed the attack. The Ukrainian newspaper reported that Russian forces were moving military equipment and troops across the Dnieper and advancing toward the left bank. The head of the Russian government of the occupied region, Sergei Eliseev, said that according to him, miners and journalists were shot in the attack. Russia is evacuating civilians from occupied Kherson as part of a plan to relocate up to 60,000 civilians via the Dnieper to other Russian-occupied areas over the next few days. He told residents of Ukraine not to follow evacuation orders. The region's governor in Russia, Vladimir Saldo, said the evacuation was necessary as Ukraine was gathering forces for a large-scale attack and Russia wanted to protect its citizens. Ukrainian forces advanced southeast from Mykolaiv towards Kherson, an area over which the Russians had little control. Troops west of Nikopol moved south to northeast of Kherson. Recent developments in the region indicate that Ukraine is getting closer to regaining control of the city, independent sources report. Ukraine is openly reportedly preparing to launch a counteroffensive with the aim of retaking the Russian-occupied Kherson, a key city in Moscow's so-called special military operation. One expert said Ukraine's attempt to fight means the road to victory is pretty sure. It has now been spoken loudly that Russia will point out that it will not be able to hold ground in Ukraine. Strategically, operationally, and tactically, it will send a signal that Russia will not be able to hold ground in Ukraine. And Ukraine's path to victory will proceed quite confidently. President Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday urged the West to warn Russia not to blow up a large dam that would flood parts of southern Ukraine as its troops prepare to launch a counterattack. HIMARS has been used as a key weapon since the first day of the operations carried out by the Ukrainian armed forces in Kherson. So why are HIMARS so important to the Ukrainian armed forces? Let's dwell on this issue a little more in detail together. The M142 HIMARS is a multiple rocket launcher system attached to the standard 6x6 medium tactical vehicle family type medium truck used by the U.S. Army. Each launcher is operated by a team of 3 and can fire 6 227mm M270 rockets and one MGM-140 ATACMS missile. Its most important feature is its high mobility. Also, the maximum range of the system depends on what type of ammunition they are firing. GPS INS M30, M31 artillery rockets and ATACMS ballistic missiles can fire up to 300 kilometers. So far, the bulk of Ukraine's artillery systems are modernized Soviet-era systems. Although the Ukrainian Armed Forces purchased a number of RM-70 multiple rocket launchers from the Czech Republic during the war, these can also fire 122mm rockets to Soviet standards. Long-range and infallible artillery support with HIMARS provides some relief for the Ukrainian army. In particular, the Ukrainian armed forces need volleys to stop the Russian armed troops in the Kherson region in a large area. However, the biggest problem of HIMARS for Ukraine is the lack of ammunition, so much so that a serious military supply chain needs to be established for the system that fires serially. In recent days, U.S. President Joe Biden continues to increase his support for Ukraine. The U.S., which did not withdraw its support from Ukraine as a result of the repressive attacks of Russian President Vladimir Putin, and took clear steps to show NATO's determination, stated that new HIMARS munitions will reach the region. The State Department announced the 23rd withdrawal of the United States from the comprehensive military aid package for Ukraine. In the latest $725 million installment, Ukraine will receive HIMARS plus 155mm ammunition and additional GMLRS shells for M67 artillery systems. Other equipment includes Humvees, unspecified anti-tank guns, and machine guns and ammunition. However, Russia is accelerating bombing civilian targets with long-range missiles and attack aircraft, while Ukraine is requesting more Western aid in the form of air defense systems. A State Department spokesman stressed that air defense remains a U.S. priority for Ukraine and noted that more than 1,400 FIM-92 Stinger manpads, as well as air surveillance and multi-mission radars, have been transferred to date. The United States also assisted NATO allies such as Slovakia in handing over Soviet-era air defense systems to Ukraine. Probably of greatest importance to Ukraine are the 8 new NASAMS that will fire AMRAAMs donated by the UK. A spokesperson for the State Department said that NASAMS will be produced and delivered to Ukraine as soon as possible. A Russian defense blog, on the other hand, made statements about why Russia could not destroy HIMARS and gave many excuses to the public. The artillery rocket system has a stealth feature that prevents Russian artillery from aiming at it. Not exactly, Western defense experts say. The more likely reason is Russia's incompetence. Russian defense experts explain why Russian artillery failed to knock out Ukraine's M142 high-motion artillery rocket systems, which fire GPS-guided rockets that brutalize vital Russian targets such as ammunition depots and command posts. In theory, Russia's huge arsenal of howitzers and multiple launch rocket systems should be able to destroy HIMARS launchers using counter-battery radar to track the rocket's trajectory and fire at launch points. But according to Russian experts, the Americans have a trick. They designed HIMARS to change the trajectory of their rockets and fool counter-battery radars. It can be seen from the flight path of the missile, which actually shifts the coordinates determined by the counter-battery war vehicles hundreds of meters, making it impossible to strike accurately. Experts draw attention to video footage released by the Ukrainian military, which shows that the rocket almost instantly changes its flight path after launch. This greatly distinguishes American systems from conventional MLRS, in which projectiles fly along a ballistic trajectory. With a high probability, it is this fact that prevents the exact location of the coordinates of the launchers from being determined. The Russian army is helpless against these missiles, and the number of HIMARS in the hands of the Ukrainian armed forces continues to increase day by day. As long as the war progresses on this plane, Putin will have to deal with much greater losses.